have taken the earth. For this I was betrayed. False gods. Idols. No more.
When 2016's X-Men Apocalypse was first announced, I couldn't contain my excitement. Apocalypse has always been one of my favorite Marvel villains, and finally seeing him on the big screen was going to be a dream come true, something I had been envisioning ever since watching the earlier X-Men films in the 2000s. As a kid, I would speculate with my own ideas and theories. My mind was always racing, with the unique and interesting possibilities at Fox's disposal. I couldn't wait. When it was announced that Oscar Isaac was going to play the title character, I didn't have any doubts in my mind. He had just come off The Force Awakens, and I had seen his work in Ex Machina. They were both strong performances. I assumed they were going to have him in costume and not use CGI, contrary to what many people would have wanted. Yeah, Apocalypse is big in the comics and other forms of media he's depicted in, but he also has the power to grow in size. That's when I felt the CGI would be needed. As long as Isaac played the part in an intimidating way, I didn't have any issue with it. Physical size isn't the only thing that makes one imposing. When the first picture of Isaac as Apocalypse was released online, I admit I was a bit skeptical just like the rest of you. Many people compared him to Ivan Ooze from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, and yeah, he did look like that. But once I saw the film, I thought they did a great job on his makeup and prosthetics. Despite being smaller than the one in the comics, this version of Apocalypse was still a strong visual representation of the character. His coloring, armor, facial expressions, they were all accurate enough, given it was a practical costume. His voice was even grand and menacing at times because they added in several different tones to make it sound like multiple beings exist within him, something we'll get to in a second. In the comics, Apocalypse is an outcast, taken in by a group of desert wanderers when he is left abandoned as a child. Believed to be the first mutant, his powers startle them at first, but his adopted father convinces him he is a god. Due to ancient carvings and a prophecy he finds in a cave, he fuels his son's beliefs, and he becomes misguided from the very beginning. At the start of the X-Men Apocalypse film, Charles Xavier states that when you give someone wings, they may fly close to the sun, referencing the story of Icarus, that the power of prophecy can make one fear the future, and that given unimaginable power, that individual may feel they are meant to rule the world. Apocalypse claims in the film to have had many names over many lifetimes since he was born. In the comics, he explains this as well. He was worshipped by civilizations all around the world, and it is assumed that his existence led to the creation of various religions and deities. If he was after all the world's first mutant, this would make sense. The primitive ways of life found in ancient times would have generated less answers to why and how. Apocalypse would have been hailed as a god. He was the only true answer they had. In the film, Apocalypse believes humans have been worshipping false gods, such as nuclear weapons, superpowers, governments, etc. He feels betrayed, and now that he has returned, seeks to eliminate the weak so he can once again take his place as the world's messiah, the self-proclaimed center of the universe. Much like in the comics, Apocalypse lives by the credence, survival of the fittest. His motivations aren't driven by any given side, such as the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants. He couldn't care less if you're human or mutant. As long as you are strong, that's all that matters.
Always the same. And now all this. No more stones. No more spears.
No more swords. No more weapons. No more systems! No more! No more superpowers.
Despite its mixed reviews, you must realize that X-Men Apocalypse was a very ambitious film. Its religious undertones, action sequences, visuals, they were trying stuff we hadn't seen before in this series. They were pushing their limits. They might have even gone too far too quickly and lost a bit of focus because of it. I mean, they even managed to throw in the astral plane for crying out loud. Cut them some slack. At least they tried.
You can fire your arrows from the Tower of Babel, but you can never strike God!
One of the common complaints about Oscar Isaac's Apocalypse is that his powers are inconsistent, and while I do agree, realize that the Apocalypse in the comics had a long list of abilities too. What he was capable of was very unclear in most cases. With that said, I feel the one in the live-action film is in many ways stronger, too strong to make this believable, and let me explain. In the comics, Apocalypse displays superhuman strength, a regenerative healing factor, telekinesis, teleportation, energy manipulation, flight, immortality, and has a genius-level intellect. On top of that, he can manipulate his body by not only growing in size, but shape-shifting his limbs into various weapons or gadgets to aid him in a fight. In the film, it is explained that Apocalypse has acquired various abilities from countless mutants over the years by having his consciousness transferred from one body to another, somehow retaining each ability as he goes. The amount of powers he has obtained is never truly clarified, though, at the beginning, we see him as an old man, and the last being he was transferred into had the power to heal himself, which provided Apocalypse with virtual immortality at that point. As the film progresses, he shows off a new ability when the plot needs him to really, and that's the problem. It happened a fair bit in the comics too, but they managed to ground him in many ways. The Apocalypse in the film can basically disintegrate entire cities into sand, and then use this material to build a large pyramid, for example. He can basically kill any number of people like Thanos did in Infinity War without the use of the Infinity Gauntlet, as long as they're in his vicinity, mind you. On top of that, there is a scene where he phases a group of factory workers into the ground, with their arms and legs sticking out almost immediately. He is much stronger than the Apocalypse in the comics, without a doubt. The main question I have is, why does he even need servants then? Why does he need horsemen? If anything, they slow his plan down. They're just in the way. In the comics, Apocalypse had 4 loyal horsemen that did his bidding. They would aid him in his schemes and attack the heroes when needed. They had abilities augmented by Apocalypse, much like in the film, but you never felt they were unnecessary. Apocalypse himself was immensely powerful, augmenting his mutant abilities as well, with celestial technology found in the ancient cave with his father, but even still he felt vulnerable. Any character should, despite their power. In some storylines, he even had a Lazarus chamber, which he would need to go to periodically in order to rejuvenate himself. Once again, there's that vulnerability. In the film, I feel once he comes to the realization someone is weak or the X-Men are standing in his way, he could eradicate them without a moment's notice. It's like he's just toying with everyone. If you can kill them, just kill them. Why twiddle your thumbs? It makes him come off as incompetent, and that's not good. I get that he wants servants and wishes to rebuild the world in his image. As a god, he would need to keep regular people alive to a certain extent, but the fact that he has Magneto, uses powers to destroy the world, seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? The end goal of Apocalypse is to obtain the telepathic powers of Charles Xavier so he can control every being on the entire planet. Makes sense given his motivations. He will be a god, everyone will worship him and become his pawns. I say it makes sense, but once again, the existence of his horsemen seem unnecessary, and the whole thing with Magneto destroying the planet, that's a lot of potential slaves gone. You've destroyed their weapons, what threat could they possibly pose at that point? Because again, he should have already killed the X-Men and anyone else standing in his way. He has that much power. I think with a bit more polishing, this Apocalypse would have been great. I mean, he's already adequate. I think Oscar Isaac is a lot of fun to watch, but the fact that they tried to throw in so many elements into one film, some of which we have seen before, pulled him down a bit in my opinion. He would have been fine if not for all these other areas, causing his motivations to feel a bit muddled. The big downside to all this is that because Apocalypse has been done so recently, we probably won't see him again in a live-action film for a long time. When we do, though, I am almost certain Disney and Marvel will do him justice in the MCU. I'll be waiting patiently until that day comes. This has been NerdGasm. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and help support the channel and share the video if you'd be so kind. I will see you in the next one. Take care.